Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam, okay, the Kaivalyamarga class. Let us begin with 3 Oms. So finally, we are here at this juncture where we begin to explore the 5 bhutas in detail, the 5 elements in detail. Now, some of you may be wondering, wait a minute, are we going around in circles? Didn't we do this earlier? We did this when we studied the Om, we did this when we did the Sankhya. The way I approach these subjects is in layers. So the first layer of these bhutas I understood, it was peeled. Then the second layer was understood in the context of Sankhya. Now we take each of this and dive into detail and try to understand what are the implications of each of these bhutas. Bhutas are elements. Why are they called bhutas? The bhutas are because it is in the past. In other words, it's already manifested. There is nothing more we can do with these basic building blocks. We can combine these 5 different elements to produce something, but each element by itself is complete and it's finished. It's done. It's fulfilled. It's tamas. That is why it is, if you go back to the Sankhya chart, it is part of the tamas. Bhuta, bhuta bhavishya. Bhuta means past in Sanskrit. So it is already manifested, already completed. So we are going to understand each of these elements in detail. And this is why this forms the sum and substance of the yogic path, the 5 elements. This forms a very important, becomes rather, and a very important foundation for spiritual progress. The way I have understood it, the way I have learned it, the way I have practiced it. So bear with me if I seem I'm overindulging in these elements, but this is how I learned it, and I think it will never be too much to come back to each of these elements and understand. Because every single aspect in your life that you're looking at today, whether it is physical in nature, whether it is mental in nature, whether it is spiritual in nature, whether it is emotional in nature by way of relationships and so on and so forth, everything can be interpreted in 3 gunas and 5 elements. Everything. And once that understanding is clear, then guess what? You will begin to be the architect of your life. You will know exactly which nut goes into which bolt, what size nut, and so you will be able to adjust these and proceed from there. Begin to orchestrate your life, and you will do that automatically with reverence and humility. Why? Because when I say you will be the orchestrator, you might think, oh my gosh, that's blasphemy. Isn't the divine the orchestrator? But when you understand the truth about these five elements, so don't underscore that importance of that statement. When you understand the importance of these five elements, when you understand the implications of these five elements, and of course the three gunas, then your definition of who you are will begin to change. And therefore now you will be operating under the divine consciousness. And in that consciousness, you will begin to take responsibility of every event. You will be able to orchestrate events in your life. That is the beauty of it. And that is why it is worth every moment of your time and my time and our time together as spiritual sadhakas to understand, explore, contemplate, brainstorm, think, meditate on these five bhutas. Like I said, these classes may at times appear scholarly, but they are not meant, not designed to make you a scholar. They are here to help you as a spiritual aspirant practicing in the field, truly seeking and yearning to experience divinity. That is the purpose. That is the only purpose why I'm here in front of the camera, to help you, to share with you my path. And so we are doing all of this with that attitude, this exploration. So the five elements. When I began this this concept of Kaivalyamarga, when I began, Maya and I began, and we said we have to begin sharing this. We can't wait for every weekends for people to come to Gurukulam and then share. It's going to take very long. There is so much to learn, so many texts to understand and cover and study, so many aspects to do. I earnestly began this. In fact, I made 2 videos. I think I mentioned this earlier sometime. I made 2 videos and said, let's go begin. And then something within me prompted, said, this something is missing. I didn't know what it was, honestly. I just listened, and it wasn't clear, but something was telling me that I need to go back to India, go back to Shiva, and pray for guidance. Honestly, this is what I felt. I know some of you might say, but Shiva is in your heart. You are Shiva. You say that. Now, why do you have to go to India? I don't know the answers to this. Okay. I'm just, like I said, I'm a fellow traveler. Sometimes I feel this very strong impulse and I just follow that impulse. I told Maya, I feel the need to go back to India and get my head cleared. And so when I went there, as I planned the trip, it became very clear to me that the understanding of the Pancha Bhutas, and above all, the beginning of teaching these elements, can be done in the 5 ancient temples dedicated to each of these elements. When that finally that picture became clear and that call was clear, it was something as if a very old memory was triggered, and I began to remember. I don't know what it is, honestly. Some very old familiar feeling. And I said, yes, that is what I should do. I should sit in the courtyard of these temples and begin these lessons. And so it is with that prayer, with that intention, with that feeling, I visited each of these temples. Took permission from those authorities where it was necessary, where it was needed. Took some videos wherever I could, because many of these temples are very, very, very particular, especially in these times, that they don't want the inner sanctum sanctorum to be videographed, and all the jewelry and all that. So whatever the reason, I didn't video those parts, but wherever I got permission, I did take the video to share with you, and just be in that energy. Because I know when we discuss these things, when I even show you a video of that energy from that video, it's I know it sounds bizarre. There's no scientific way to explain this, but then the energy of that temple transcends time and space, and you bring the temple into your home. So allow me to do that. So we are today beginning with the first of these five bhutas. And as you might think, we begin with space. I'm going to go the other way around. We begin from the earth and go upwards. Just like we did the Omkara. We started from the earth and went upwards. Although, in the way you understand creation, the way we understood Sankhya, it was always from top down. Space, wind, fire, water, earth. Now, when I mention these things, it should be pretty obvious to you, right? If you find these still confusing, be patient, or go back to previous classes and listen to a couple of those lectures again. These the way the hierarchy of these elements are always space, the lightest one, space. Then comes wind, then comes fire, then comes water, then comes earth. And as we finish this, by the time we finish this in the next few weeks, you will really begin to understand each of this, and you will know it instinctively, impulsively, natively. You will begin to understand each of these elements, where they are present, how they are present in the body, in the mind, and how we can implement them. And that learning will go on, that assimilation, that practice will go on, that never ends. And that is the spiritual sadhana. That is what makes it a mindful living. What is spiritual sadhana? Mindful living. Enlightened living. What is that? Mindful living. That is enlightened living. Knowing that all of these elements are not, it doesn't end with my body here. It is constantly interacting rather, with the elements outside. And so that is what will happen. So when we begin to study, we begin something which is very obvious, because straight away we jump to mind and space and all of that, which is very subtle. Then it might be interesting for some point. After that, you will say, "Oh, this is not realistic. It's kind of some fantasy world." So what do? We start with something very obvious. What is that? Matter. Why matter? Because I can touch this watch, I can see this watch, I can feel it, and therefore I can say, let's start with matter. So that is the idea. So you go backwards. You're going back home, right? So you start with what is obvious, what is really holding you back, and then from there begin your journey back home. Okay. So with that in mind, the first temple that allowed me to visit was, of course, Dakshina Murthy temple, which I paid respects to in the beginning of all this. That is where the term Kaivalyamarga came in. I wanted to call it Kaivalya meditation, but the Kaivalyamarga came in the presence of those temples. And I wasn't even clear if it was my idea. What is it? Where is this term coming from? But now it's very, very, very clear in my mind that there was a divine prompting for that term. It is a path, and that path is individual to each one of us. Each one of us can carve the path to Kaivalya. And then this temple was the temple that called me, was the temple of the earth element. This temple is called Akambareshwar. So today I am going to be switching slides, but I haven't had the time to test it. Believe it or not, it was so busy. I've just managed to put them together. So bear with me if there's some technical discrepancy, but I hope, let's see how the universe plans it. But I said there is no way I'm backing out. I have to do this class today and begin this journey, because there is so much to share just on this topic alone. We'll have part 1 and we go on. We'll see how many parts there is. So Akambareshwar temple, that is the name. It's spelled out in front of you. Akambareshwar. Ambareshwar, Ishwar is of course Lord. Ambara is mango. Akambareshwar is Lord of the mango tree. Lord of the mango tree. You see, there was a banyan tree there under Dakshina Murthy. Now you have mango tree. At least be grateful there is only trees. There isn't switch species across. Trees have always been very symbolic of growth, of spirituality, because the roots are holding you back. You're anchored in your roots, but they don't hold you back from growth. In fact, the roots being anchored, it becomes foundation for a tree to grow. While the banyan tree has no flowers and it's got tiny fruits, this tree, the mango tree, has juicy fruits. So there is a lot of significance. We'll see if we can explore that. But the name of this temple is Lord of the Mango Tree. It is a very powerful temple, a very, very, very huge temple. And this is where I began my first lecture, other than, of course, the Dakshina Murthy temple, which I visited first. When it came to the elements, this is where I sat. Strangely, the first time I went to this temple, I took all the videos, fully prepared, scheduled my day, went there, and there was a beautiful place. Because in these huge temples, there is always something or the other going on. There is, as you will see in one of these videos, there was a marriage going on. So there's always something going on in the temple. It's alive. It's the culture is very, 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 very alive and very powerful, especially in Kanchipuram, where these traditions are carried down to the very letter, if you will. The priests in those temples, the practices in those temples have not changed even one bit to accommodate any kind of modernization or anything. As far as I know, they stick to exactly the same traditions, the same methods that was done 2,000-3,000 years ago, however long the traditions were passed down to them. And so it's fascinating to be part of those traditions, to watch those traditions, and so on. So the first time I went there, fully prepared and everything, it's a small camera. I just had to hit record and start recording. I went there, sat under a very beautiful place, scenic spot, and there was a very powerful experience that happened. And I started talking about that experience, and then spent an hour or so talking about the earth element. And everything was finished. I come back home and I see my camera. All the other video clips were there, except these ones which I talked about, that powerful experience which I had at the temple, and then about the earth element. Only those two videos were somehow just not there. It was just not there. Even this morning, as I sat, and late last night, as I sat to see these videos and see how we could bring them together for the class, I was hoping somehow mysteriously they will appear, but they didn't. But I took that as an indication that I need to revisit that temple and redo this. So the divine was guiding me. I know it in my heart. And therefore, allow me to present. So let us take the first few minutes to listen to what I have to say initially about these temples. When I visit these temples, I go in the very traditional garb. It is believed when you go to Shiva temples in South India especially, that men, this applies only to men, not to women for obvious reasons. Men do not wear anything on top. In other words, they are bare-bodied on top. They only wear a dhoti. The reason being, clothes are an indicator of social status, right? A rich man could wear a silk shirt. A poor man may have a tattered shirt to wear, or maybe not have a shirt to wear. So my understanding is, when you go into the temple, you put aside your status and all of that aside. So scholars would have, shawls blessed to them by kings and so on. So that is not the place for you to wear shawls. That is a place where you remove everything and go bare-bodied. So the rich and the poor and everyone is seen alike when you are standing in the sanctorum of these temples. I like to follow that tradition. I like that tradition. I think it's a very powerful way to come out of the comfort zone and say, all right, I'm going to remove my shirt, just wear my sacred thread. And if I have these Rudraksha malas or Japa malas, I'll just wear that. And that's how it'll be. And so that's how you'll see me in most of these videos. So having said that, let's go to the next one, and I hope the video plays. All right. So let's take a listen to this video. Namaste and welcome to this class of Kaivalya meditation or Kaivalyamarga. I'm recording this class in a very sacred temple, in a very ancient temple. Again, over 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. One loses count when you say 5,000, 7,000 years ago, because these portals here date back millions of years, actually speaking, truly speaking. But now at this point that becomes a matter of belief, and so it's perhaps more sensible to say thousands of years. But what I really mean is way beyond time itself. The temple itself was built by many kings over the last 1500 or 2000 years or so. And this temple is special, and this is where I want to teach this lesson in the pressings of this temple, because this lesson is about one of the basic five elements that are uh, the five building blocks of creation, if you will, and that is the element of earth, Prithvi, as we call this. This temple is dedicated to the Prithvi element, the earth element. Again, in the Sanctum Sanctorum, the core deity is Shiva. The name of the temple is Akambareshwar temple, Akambaranatha temple, the Lord of the mango trees. There is a story here. There is great symbolism here, and so let's explore that. But before that, I want to tell you how special I feel in being able to do this, propagate the teachings of the ancient wisdom at the places which I believe is the very birthplace of these kind of thought processes. And therefore, it is wonderful to be here, to be able to sit in the places where great yogis and rishis meditated, discovered these ancient truths, and taught them to the world. And therefore, it is with that humility and again a sense of pride that I am offering this lesson for your perspective, for your learning. I was at the temple, Sanctum Sanctorum, and as always, they give me these little garlands from the deity. So this has been blessed the whole day. It was at the puja, and so when I wear it, I feel I'm being guided to speak, and the words that come out from me comes out from the depths of wisdom that the universe contains. So I'm drawing from that. I don't claim any of this as my own. I've read books, I've met teachers, I've learned from my Sadguru, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. For many years, listened to his discourses, meditated upon them, contemplated upon them. And at the age of nearly 60, I'm beginning to share these lessons, because now I realize how much there is to share, how much there is to benefit if one knows and one begins to meditate on these. So in today's meditation, in today's class, we'll discuss the earth element. That was a very brief introduction. I just want to touch upon the points that I brought out in that brief video. One was, I keep talking about these two things. One is called portals and one is called temples. And I realize when I keep watching these videos, I say portals are a million years old, and I say the temple is built 1500 years ago and 2000 years ago. That could be a confusion. In your minds as a viewer, say, wait a minute, you just said million years ago, now you're saying 2000 years ago, which is true. What I mean by that particular temple has survived thousands and thousands of years, in fact more than a million years, in fact in yugas, means that there is a portal of energy that was first. There could have been a very small shrine built there, okay, and that was the place dedicated for this principle of the earth element. So that portal is never going to go away. And then, recognizing the power of that place, the importance of that place, a temple was built. Nobody knows what does the first temple look like, but if you go to the innermost Sanctum Sanctorum, you get an idea of that could have been the very first temple, because all of these Sanctum Sanctorums are very small. So maybe at that point, when it was originally built, thousands and thousands of years ago, that was all that was required, because it was a space. It was all of this were in forests and in this is, if we say Akambareshwar is mango tree, it's not just one tree sitting amidst concrete concrete jungle today, but it could have been, and it was, I believe, and a mango orchard, a wild forest of mangoes, trees, and all of that. So at one point, Kanchipuram had this Pala river flowing by. It was a very beautiful, a wonderful place, which is why there are more than 1,000 temples in that city. So there were these portals, powerful energy centers in these parts of the world. Okay, and they are perhaps there in every part of the world. I can feel them even in this part of the world. There are some in Trinidad, as I know, as I've been there and experienced instant meditation happening there. But in India, because of the traditions and the culture and the yogis and the saints, they had the chance to discover And so they are already established for us. So it's very easy to go there. So portals to me are energy centers that helps us awaken almost spontaneously when you go and be in that place. Temples are structures that are built around these portals that help us to practice, that help us to awaken. That is what I mean. I say that temples are structures, institutions that are built. Now, in India, especially in the south, um, you have kings that would rule. In the last couple of thousand years, if you see, there were kings that ruled, and every king wanted to contribute. So he would expand the temple, build an extra wall, build another courtyard, build 1,000 pillars hall, something they would do. Each one of them magnificent. In most of these temples, if you go, it's so awe-inspiring to see the craftsmanship, the devotion, the dedication, the geometrical accuracy, the tremendous architectural planning that would have gone behind all of this. The fact that these huge granite structures have withstood so many cyclones and storms and earthquakes and no one knows what natural calamities, but they stand today as an epitome of deep spiritual awakening. They are not going anywhere anytime soon. So this is how I distinguish between portals and temples. If I do speak about them, just bear in mind that I wanted to make that clear. The other one I already explained, Akambareshwar. The meaning of Akambareshwar means Lord of the Mango Tree. We'll come to that story in a bit. This temple was built, there was already a temple in place. And then that temple was rebuilt by the Pallava kings, then later added on by the Chola Raja, or Shoyan, as they call it in Tamil Nadu. So Raja Shoyan and all of that, these are amazing kings, very enlightened, very spiritually, deeply devoted to the Shiva Tattva. So they all of them, one by one after the other, built this temple. So what you see today is attributed to these temples. And then the main Gopuram, that is the tower, which goes about, I believe it's about 57 or 58 meters high. Again, stories of granite, just sheer rock placed on top of each other and carved to precision. It's amazing how they would do that. Now that was apparently built by the Vijayanagara king. It's just a very simple data. I'm putting it out there because I'm going to show you those glimpses of those temples, and you might want some basic data. The Maha Gopuram, as they call it, the main Gopuram, the Raja Gopuram, as they call it. It's about 57, 58 meters high, and it was built by the Vijayanagara king, the Krishna Devaraya. He built it. So he's from the neighboring kingdom, but they all wanted to contribute. See, there was a great sense of friendliness, a deep sense of devotion to be part of history, to leave a legacy behind. That is why we have India as it is today, so deeply rooted in these ancient wisdom. And no matter with 2,000 plus years of constant invasion by foreign invaders coming to loot the country for riches and so on and so forth, all that is history now. But still, we can't ignore the fact. But in spite of all of that, in spite of massive conversions and a great effort to overtake, the spirit, the spirituality, the Vedanta, the Vedas, the learning, the deep spirituality of Hinduism, one could not even create a dent on those. That is the beauty of that. Why? Because the teachings were predominantly oral in nature. The teachers, right from Dakshina Murthy onwards, realize once it is conveyed to you in your heart and once it stays with you, in you, nobody can steal that from you. Even you can't erase it. Once that becomes your experience and your learning, you cannot erase it. So who else can steal it from you? You can share it. When you share it, it becomes more, but nobody can steal it and make you forget it. So it can never be forgotten, right? That is the amazing thing about this temple. So let's go to the next video and learn a little more about this temple. Why is this temple, what is so special about this temple? The significance of the earth element here is symbolized in Sand, the Shivalingam that is here, is made of sand. Now, when you think of earth, Prithvi, as the foundation of creation, if you will, of matter, the building block of matter, Prithvi is one of them. You would think of a mountain, you would think of a solid rock. But why would you think of a grain of sand? Why would a lingam be built of sand? Sand is so fragile. Sand just goes away with time. Why was this story around this temple around a sand lingam? And why sand of all the things, the element or the symbolism of the Prithvi element? One begins to ponder over that. And I want you to ponder over that today. And my little tidbits might give you some sense of direction on where I am thinking, and I'm sure you will have better ideas than what I have. To me, if you break down rocks, if you break down mountains, all of that, it comes down into sand. Underwater, under the riverbed, what is there? Sand. Under the sea, the base of the sea, what is there? It's sand. So matter itself breaks down, and finally when you break down matter, you go into atoms and molecules, and sand particles are the best way to visualize, to picturize, to symbolize atoms and molecules. So atoms and molecules together form the matter, and therefore sand particles together form the lingam. One has to understand that these temples that were built in such precision, and as I speak maybe or some other time at part of this video, you will get glimpses of some of the videos I've taken inside. It's just magnificent. Every pillar, not a single pillar is the same. Every pillar is different, differently carved, with a different energy, with a different purpose in mind. So people who did that obviously were not people with blind beliefs or build something, oh, there's sand available, let's build a lingam out of that. There was grave, deep symbolism and meaning that one has to understand. And Parvati and Shiva get married in this temple. That is the beauty of this temple. The story goes that Parvati is Shiva's consort, and these are the Puranic stories essentially told us, so we understand the symbolism behind these, not as epics or historical events. Historical events are those which have actually taken place, and they are categorized separately in the Hindu scriptures, in the Sanatana Dharma, as itihasas. These are Puranas, symbolism. And so here we want us to understand the symbolism of this. Either it's symbolic, either because they wanted to explain these in a symbolic way, or it is so old, so many millions of years old, that one has to now only relate to it in a symbolic way. One cannot understand it as a history. I don't know. But let's for a moment understand the story and go with it. So Parvati, Shiva's consort, closes his eyes for a second, and this divine consciousness that is always effulgent, always watchful, always mindful, where the eyes are closed, darkness envelops in creation for a second. And when she opens her eyes, she realizes her folly, and she says, I need to go down to the earth and do penance. And therefore she comes down to the earth in this very spot and does penance for over 12 years. She builds a lingam from the sand and does penance. To me, the symbolism of that penance is, it is so hard to build something solid out of sand. Have you tried that at the beach? You build something, a wave will come and just wash it off. You can build something out of clay, let it dry. But sand, it's almost impossible. And therefore, she achieved the impossible. To me, that is what spirituality is. You go against the laws of physics and science and achieve the impossible. Achieve the impossible in the sense, something that senses cannot understand. Go into the spiritual world. And therefore she built a lingam out of the sand, worshipped the lingam. And then the divine consciousness within matter appeared. That is the beauty. Shiva appears and then she marries him. So marriage is here, the understanding of Shiva and Shakti, matter and energy, happened in this very spot. The teachings must have happened in this spot. The discovery of such great truths must have happened in this spot. And therefore a temple is consecrated. But I also believe that, like I always keep saying, these are portals of divine energy. One has to come to sit here and meditate to enjoy how blissful this is. So that is the significance of Akambareshwar temple, the Prithvi element, the earth element dedicated to the Shiva consciousness. And there we shall further learn what this earth element is all about. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, let me try this again. So it's very fascinating in Kanchipuram as to how the very way they design these temples. You have the Akambareshwar temple on one side, and then you have the Kamakshi temple on one side, and then you have Lord Muruga or Kartikeya or Subramanya Swami temple right in between these two temples. So there was symbolism even in choosing the real estate, the property to build a temple. It was all done in divine consultations with ancient rishis and sages, understanding the meaning, trying to symbolize, and everything, therefore, is very symbolic in these temples. The reason why they have Ganesha on one side or Vishnu on one side and Shiva here, and what is the shape of the lingam, what is it? One has to go there and explore all of this and meditate on all of these temples. It's very fascinating. And Kanchipuram being one of the very old cities, it is also called a Moksha Dwara. In India, there are 7 such Moksha Dwaras. That means gateways to liberation. And Kanchipuram is one city that offers this. So the entire town there is a huge portal, if you will, where you can just completely be engaged in spirituality if you choose to. Just like Varanasi or Kashi is another powerful place. If you choose to, you could. But like everything else, it has this superfluous coverings of that. But once you go past that, then you will begin to appreciate the ancient traditions that are still very vivid and alive in Kanchipuram. So it's very fascinating, this temple and the story behind it. So based on what I just explained about Parvati and Puranas and Itihasas, I just wanted to make sure, because this is more like a class atmosphere. It's not just having a fun time listening to somebody. I just want to make sure, I want to review what I just said. It is very fascinating that here earth is visualized as sand in this temple. I could never get over it when I first saw that. The Shivalingam itself is conical in nature. It's very rare to see one. It's simply like, the clowns wear a cap which starts, it's a circle at the bottom and it just becomes conical in nature. That's how it is. Tall, very unassuming, extremely tall, about maybe 2.5, 3 feet tall. You might see Google might give you more details than that than what I'm saying. I'm just saying what I saw. Very tall and very slender and straight. It's built of sand and it got crystallized. And these priests have been preserving that for all these centuries. It's fascinating. So, to me, like I explained earlier, and something that you need to meditate on and I need to meditate on, is sand is such an important concept of earth, matter. Did they symbolize sand because of the molecule and the atom part of it? The fact that I can pick up 1 grain of sand, if you will. Even biblical, they talk of 1 grain of sand. So there is this. It's interesting that the lingam is made of sand, and so there is no water or liquid poured on this lingam, no abhishekam done on this lingam. Now, in traditional practices, in Agama Shastra and all of that, in traditional practices, when you have Vishnu and Shiva, Vishnu is about enlightened life, right? He's about celebrating life. He's about abundance. He's about prosperity. He's about living life to its fullest. Shiva is going within, deeply meditating and all of that. So these are just ideas, okay? Don't take them literally. But the idea here is, so Vishnu is called Alankara Priyaha. Alankara Priyaha means Vishnu likes to be decorated. He wears his crown and you see Krishna and all of that, right? Rama was a prince. Of course, he went to the forest, but nevertheless, he's a prince. Krishna is a prince. Vishnu Narayana himself sits there completely decked up. If you go to all of his temples, he'll be completely decked up. Always decked in gold and silver and all of that. Shiva, he doesn't even have a form, poor thing. He's just one stone symbolizing, okay, this is Shiva. That's pretty much it, traditionally. And that's why there is a form of Shiva which is called Aghora. We'll see if we can explore that in some context as we go along. And Dakshina Murthy is again formless. So these are all ways we are trying to understand this formless aspect that is presented to us. So now, how do you relate to this formless, just a piece of stone, a lingam, if you call, if you will, the elliptical shape of representing the universe in an elliptical shape. The cosmos is elliptical in shape, right? So elliptical in shape. The only way you can do is abhisheka, offering to this supreme, offering of everything. So Shiva is called Abhisheka Priyaha. Abhisheka, he loves Abhishek. So that's why anywhere you see lingam, they always do Abhishek. In fact, because it's too painful now, they have a pot on top and say, yeah, okay, you do it. I can't keep my hand and do it, right? So we come up with ways and means and technology to do that. Not that there's anything bad, but that's the idea is it has to be constantly being offered. Also because water cools down, because Shiva is the Rudra energy. Okay, so in order to cool that energy down, in order to control that energy, there's constantly something is poured on him. So he's always calm. Okay, so these are the traditional practices practiced across almost every Shiva temple except this temple. In this temple, the main lingam, okay, the sum and substance of this temple, no abhisheka is done. No abhisheka is done to this lingam. These artis are shown, flowers are put around. They are protecting this very, very, very carefully. It's fascinating. So, earth made of sand. The reason I brought out that idea of, I'll talk about that mango tree in a bit. The reason I brought out about the sand was, it's fascinating how they talked about Parvati building the sand lingam. Right? If you sit on the riverbed, especially on dry sand, if you try to build something, it will not even stay. So you need water. All right. So let's take wet sand and build something. What happens when it gets dry? It is bound to fall back. Right? That's why even writings on the sand is not considered great. But here, the building block of creation is sands. Those sands particles get together. In other words, atoms, molecules get together and form creation. Very fascinating to see how symbolically this was conveyed through a story. Also, the Puranic story of Parvati covering the eyes of Shiva. To me, the way I understand that story is when Maya covers, not my wife Maya, but the Maya. I've got into trouble saying that, so I always explain that. So when Maya covers the effulgence of Shiva, then there is separation. In other words, why are you and I not realizing the Shiva within us? In other words, why am I not realizing I am Shiva? Because there is Maya covering, and therefore there is separation. So what happens? Because of that momentary blackness that was caused because she covered Shiva, in other words, Maya, Prakriti covered Purusha, she went right back from one end to the other end. Earth is the final part, right? In Sankhya Yoga, if you see, ultimately comes down to earth, and then after that, that's it. That's creation. So now physical matter, she comes right back to being matter. And there she begins to perform tapas, penance. To me, all of these are very important. Penance, tapas, in the sense of spiritual practice, spiritual sadhana, constant yearning. All this is tapaha. Tapaha is Agni. She once again begins at yearning. And just like Sita yearned for Rama and went and joined him back, Parvati begins to invoke the Shiva energy. And just by yearning, here the beauty here is, the one more thing that I believe here is, which is it's an opening for Bhakti Marga and Bhakti Yoga, is when you do this with devotion and yearning, which is why I said in the previous class, I think I use the example of, if the father wants to go to the daughter's birthday, if that is the yearning he has, he will take any path that comes his way, right? If that is your attitude to reach God, then he will come down and marry you. Where? In the Muladhara. He will come down to the earth. So Kanchipuram is a place where the earth element is celebrated, but it also celebrates the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. In other words, Shiva manifested himself in the earth element. So now what has happened in this earth element that you see around us is Shiva and Parvati. That's why it is Samba Sada Shiva. So it's a very powerful, powerful thoughts for us to meditate on, contemplate on. I'm throwing these thoughts, right? I may not be spelling it out to you, and there's a purpose behind it. Think on these lines, meditate on these lines, and see how these revelations come to you. Okay? The mango tree, fascinating in this temple, is still there. And they actually have a bark, and I think we have time to see that video after this quick presentation here. The third video is about 3,500 years ago, they preserve a bark, a huge bark, piece of bark, which is about 5 feet or so in height and a couple of feet wide. They have preserved either a branch or a bark and covered it with gold, of course, to preserve it, and kept it inside a glass case. So they preserved that for at least 3,500 years ago. But the mango tree itself, every time it falls, they grow it again. Many of these trees around in the temples have the same DNA of the original tree. So it's very fascinating. What the priest told me at this temple was also that this tree was not just an ordinary mango tree. Because it has been in history and constantly guarded and the sanctity has been maintained, I want to believe them, right? Otherwise, it's very hard to believe these things. What they say is the fruits from this tree, every branch, there are 4 or 5 huge branches, and they say from different parts of the branch, there are different fruits are the same, mangoes, but they taste different. They taste very, very different. This is what I've heard. I've not had a chance to experience it, but this is what I heard. And so they even put it there in the temple. There is a very healing energy in this temple, especially around the mango tree. And a lot of sacred weddings take place there. It's a very beautiful, beautiful place to be. Itihasas versus Puranas. I've explained this earlier. I just want to touch upon that. Puranas are very, very, very old. Very old. Even when it was written as Puranas. Or when it was shared, the stories rather. Because they come under Smarana. You have to remember these stories. Even when they were shared as Puranas. That means they are so old that the only way we can relate now is symbolically. Okay? But did it really happen? Did it not happen? It is immaterial at this point to question that. You can believe it really happened as well, if you wish to. But don't judge the events there based on the customs that we are in now. Then we are looking at it from a very small lens. And we will miss the symbolism and the meaning out of it. So we will explore when we understand a little more of this earth element as we go along. Where does Ganesha fit in the Mooladhara? Why did Shiva cut his head? What could be the symbolic meaning of all of that? So we will understand all that as we go along, the way I have understood it, the way it made perfect sense to me, and it helps me in my sadhana, in my spirituality, in my practice. So Puranas to us is not wrong to understand them symbolically, the stories of these Puranas. Itihasas are relatively more recent. They are recorded, such as Valmiki wrote the Ramayana, Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata. It is recorded in Miki. No authors are there for these writings. They are recorded versions of the Avatara Purushas, the incarnations, and so on. The great teachers who have walked this earth, and so on. So they come under historical itihasas. Ramayana, Mahabharata, itihasas. Shiva Puran, Garuda Puran, Vishnu Puran. See, the word itself is Puran. So they are all Puranas. Very, 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 very old. Right in the beginning of creation, perhaps. All of those energies manifested and set right this Leela that we call life. Parvati's penance, sand lingam, we just talked about. It's very, very fascinating for me. So, in today's meditation, think of the significance of Parvati and Shiva's marriage in the earth element. What is the message that comes to you? Why wouldn't they just have a penance state there and then marriage taking place in the space temple or even beyond some other temple, right? But there is a deeper significance. So meditate upon it, contemplate upon it. there is a marriage taking place right there in the Mooladhara, in the earth element, in this gross manifestation. Is this gross manifestation, therefore, that is what I ask myself, a manifestation of Shiva and Parvati together? Everything, if matter itself, and in other words, go back to Sankhya, Purusha and Prakriti were separate. Where that when they come close together, Sankalpa Shakti creates everything coming down to creation. So what is this creation? Is a manifestation of that marriage between Purusha and Prakriti, marriage between Shiva and Shakti. Is that what is symbolized in this temple? Something for you to meditate upon. These are the powerful concepts. When we meditate, we begin to open doors to higher wisdom, higher learning. Let me end this class today with the last video. I've taken the video as is. I didn't get time to edit it, but I didn't want to also edit it. A part of me said, let us all enjoy the temple, just get glimpses of the temples, and then just be there. So you will get a glimpse of the mango tree right in the beginning as it is preserved today, the 3,500 years old. And then towards the end, I also go to the actual mango tree that is an alive mango tree, which has the same DNA of this old mango tree. Of course, they have walls built around it. You cannot go and touch it or anything like that, because you know how we are. We will all be breaking branches and taking it home. So that is very protected. But nevertheless, I got it on video. But more importantly, I want you to appreciate this huge temple spread over 40 acres. Inside the long corridors, these huge pillars. It's magnificent to think that this was built, just this temple alone, forget the portal part of it. The temple alone was built by this Chola and Pandava kings 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. It's just fascinating. Okay, so enjoy that video, and then I'll see you again on Friday with more to learn and more to share on the earth element. Let me get out of the way as we begin this video. That is a mango tree that is preserved in the temple. There is one shrine for Vishnu. where some of the most ancient lingams, Shiva lingams, are found in this amazing temple, which is many, many thousands of years old. This portal is so powerful. This is where Shaivism was perhaps born. Temple dedicated to the earth element of Shiva. I can't keep my eyes on the camera because there's so much to see. Every single pillar, look at this. Every single pillar has so much information, so much beauty. Granite. Every Shiva lingam here, over hundreds of them here. I don't know exactly how many. எவ்வளவு சிவலிங்கம் இருக்குங்க? 1030. I believe there are 1008 Shivalingams in this temple alone. I haven't counted, so I can't verify that. But and each one is either established by a king or a yogi, at least 1,000 years old. Amazing history. The history of Shaivism dates back centuries, yugas as they call it in Sanskrit. Natarajar linga. Amazing work on each pillar is fascinating. Hundreds of pillars like these exist throughout the temple. Each one having a history. There's another sanctum sanctorum. Wonderful deity. Again, Shiva. Wedding taking place. Wasn't that fascinating? I hope you liked that little tour. Um, well, yes, you could get technical about finding what was that and what was this and all of that, but just the energy of that, being in that place where so many Vedic mantras are chanted day in and day out. The ancient music is continuously played. The sound vibrations in that temple itself is amazing. There's another beautiful thing about stones. They have the ability to absorb and as well reflect. So when you go there, you are actually literally basking in that powerful sound energy. So there's little children playing or talking or somebody else talking, all that after a while it just fades into insignificance. And you begin to bask in a higher energy. It's very fascinating. I spent the whole of Shivratri night visiting a few of these and chanting Rudram in each of these temples. My mother-in-law and I, we walked to this temple, for example, and we just chose a pillar because there were hundreds of people in this temple on that night. But we just chose a pillar, sat down, and started singing. A group of people joined us, and just we made our little own mandali, if you will, a group, and we were just singing Shiva bhajans and simply chanting. It's so much joyful, where you're not um, bound by any conditions. You're just tuning into the divine and being in that divine plane of consciousness. And then you begin to understand that these are real experiences, places where you can actually experience that energy, and then you allow that experience to stay. And those kind of experiences begin to transform you. It was my hope to bring the energy of that temple into your homes. And I hope I achieved that. I believe I did in my heart. I believe I do because that is energy that is sustained for thousands of years. And so, thank you for watching. If you would like to stay tuned with any of our announcements, if you're a regular viewer, if you haven't already, you could send me a WhatsApp and I will include you into one group that we have where if there's any important announcement or any information that I want to share, I can share it with all of you, especially when it comes to online scheduling and all of that. In addition to that, whenever I get some inspirational thought, I do share them. It's just that off late in the last 3 or 4 months, since I've been so busy with the online, I haven't been very active in that group. But it's okay. It's a quiet group. Not nobody else can post. Only I or Maya and I can post material. We don't want to keep that place being flooded with forwards of every kind. So it's a clean virtual space, hopefully, and we'll just keep it for KYG related activities. So if you're interested in being part of the group, be interested in being in tune with what we are about, what we are doing, and please send me a WhatsApp. I'll include you. If you have any questions regarding this program or anything, please send me an email to sundar@kyg.org. Until we meet again the day after tomorrow, which is a Friday, and continue our learning of this earth element and see a little more of this fascinating temple and the outer pressings of this temple. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay blessed. Let us bring this class to an end with one Om and three Shantis. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.